Hello, everybody. I want to introduce somebody who I feel is beautiful on the inside and out. I probably have been friends with you on Facebook for, I want to say, at least a couple of years.
I think so.
And I think that, yeah, it has been because I think it was before COVID. And so if we've been in COVID for a couple of years, it's been a little bit longer than a couple of years. Uh, and we got in touch because you responded to something that I posted back then on my personal Facebook page. And then you introduced your book. And I was just so impressed with just who you were from right from the beginning that I was like, I'm going to go on Amazon and get her book. Or no, wait, maybe it was Kindle. Is it Kindle? I think
Maybe
it's
I think you did it on Kindle. I think
I
it
think I
was.
did a Kindle copy. Yeah, because I'm a minimalist and I don't buy very many books because I get them on Kindle. So I probably got it on Kindle. And I started reading your book and was just blown away by your experience and how you moved through it and even how you just were able to go back and interpret what had happened to you in life. And I haven't even introduced your name. So this is Elizabeth Somboun. Did I say that right?
Yeah,
All
you
right. So she has the initial M in the front of her name, but she goes by Elizabeth. So if you were trying to find her on the internet, then how would people put the M on there?
so it's Elizabeth Somboun, but if you're trying to find my business page, it's just Elizabeth Somboun LLC. So it's really easy. So there's only one of me. So there's not too many
Okay.
Sombouns out there. So.
Okay. So then when you say your business page, are you talking about your Facebook business page?
Yes.
Or yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, can you let me tell everybody too. So, if people are in my group, they hopefully know by now that I am a physical therapist. I'm a trauma informed physical therapist. My specialty is helping people get out of some kind of just whatever debilitating pain, including complex chronic pain. And then I just kind of somewhat happened into the field of pelvic health and physical therapy, and that became my subspecialty. And over the last 3 years, I mean, that's basically what I was, the kinds of people that I was seeing every single day were these people that had complex issues with pain and then also had these pelvic health problems. And what actually happened was I agreed to join this practice, and they wanted somebody that could do pelvic health. And I had no idea that most of these people that were coming in were going to be struggling with some kind of persistent pain. I had no idea that it was going to be the main thing that I was going to be focusing on. And so I think one of the things that maybe, caused you to spot me on Facebook was at that time, I was like, I don't know, it was weird. I just was like soaking up all this stuff about sex trafficking,
Oh,
human trafficking.
yeah, so
That's what it was.
yeah.
And I was looking at documentaries and watching and listening to people's amazing stories on YouTube, honestly. And I couldn't stop listening to these stories. And there was even something that was big in the news here in the Portland area because in Portland, Oregon, Portland is considered actually a little bit of a hub for sex trafficking because the I-5 corridor, the I-5 freeway, goes from Mexico all the way up to Canada, right? So then a lot of that is going on all along the I-5 in all the major big cities, and Portland is one of them. And I was shocked because I mean, just the way I thought about the place where I live, I live in Vancouver, Washington, and Portland is literally just over the river. And I mean, I never just thought like, hey, this is going on right outside, my neighborhood. And I hope it's not going on in my neighborhood. And maybe we just don't know about it because it's so prevalent that, and it's amazingly kept so well hidden. I mean, it had been until all of this breaking news, but it's not like it's new. It's, this has been going on forever, really. And it just became light, it just came to light because of, some, celebrity related things. And then, it kind of blew up from there, right? So I think around that time is when it blew up, and I just, I knew it was going on. I just didn't know it was going on right here where I live. And just before, or during that same time, actually, that I, started really just, just absorbing all this information about what was going on. There was a huge thing that happened, like in the town where I had my clinical practice. And there was this big raid, and these people got busted. And I was just like, oh my God, that's like right off the freeway exit that I come to work every single day. And this was going on actually in a parking lot in somebody's like ridiculous RV or something. And I just was, I don't know, I don't want to say my heart was going, like, I don't want to say I was like giving my heart away to all of this sadness that was going on, but like the awareness just opened my eyes to such a degree that, I didn't want this sort of thing to be an invisible part of living anymore, because we obviously need to create some kind of meaningful change in the world where a business like this, people don't need to seek it out, right? So, okay, so tell us a little bit about your book, because your book is like, it's super raw and to the point. Yeah, Elevators. Go ahead and tell us the name of your book.
Well, it was kind of ironic because I wrote it in 4 days. But the
Wow.
editing, yeah. I don't do anything. I don't do anything in small steps. It's
my gosh, you're so amazing.
I do it so big. The editing was hard. The editing was really, really hard. And my editor kind of decided to do some investigating with my story. And so some of the parts were really, really hard because she wanted to interview my grandmother, like my biological grandmother and stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, like hearing my grandmother.
Oh my goodness.
To my editor, like, yeah, this story is absolutely true. And hearing it again, it was just like, I actually got off the phone with my editor. I'm like, she is all yours. Like, I can't do this. Like, I didn't know that she was going to do this to me. And I was just like, I have to go. Like, you have to do the interview now because I can't even emotionally handle this.
And so, what was she doing to you? Like, what was grandma doing?
So I'll tell you, okay, trigger warning. I don't know if I need to do a trigger warning here, but just in topic here.
No,
so,
I appreciate that.
Yeah, so what happened is I was born out of incest and rape. My mother's aunt's husband raped her, and this is how I came into existence. And my mom when I was born, my mom was dating my deceased aunt's boyfriend at the time. So my aunt was murdered, and then shortly after the funeral and stuff, when my mom was pregnant, I guess to kind of replace the fact that his, Judy had died, he was now dating my mom. So on my original birth certificate, it actually has his last name, but he's actually not my father. He's actually the fiance of my dead aunt's fiance. So they hooked up for a while. And so life was kind of complicated because of that whole background. And so what happened is my mom hooked up with this guy. She married him. And I didn't like him very much. I didn't like him. And I was having quite the argument with my mom when I was 3.5, and I was like, I don't like him. Like, I want him to go away. I just want it to be us. And she was like, you have to like him, Mary. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Like, he's providing for us. He's Clayton's dad. Like, you just have to learn how to get along. So I was like, do I have to? And she's like, yeah, you kind of have to. So in that moment, I jumped off the bed. I walked barefoot across the wooden floor. I jumped up on the oversized cloth couch, and we were watching TV. And so I'm sitting there and I'm debating, okay, she says I have to attach. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to try to cuddle with this person. So I jumped onto his lap and I put my arm like this, and I was just like, kind of laying back like this. And then he took a cigarette to the under part of my arm and like left it there.
Oh my goodness.
So I was, that was kind of the start of the fact that, this wasn't safe. So my mom took me to the emergency room. She tried to lie her way out of it, saying that this was an accident. And the doctor was like, absolutely not, Linda. He's like, this is a 3rd-degree burn.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't accidental. And so my mom was like, well, what are you going to do? And the doctor said, well, this is the deal. I delivered her, I delivered you, and I delivered your grandmother. So he's like, I'm not going to do anything. He's like, I should call social services on you, but he's like, I'm going to give you another chance, but you better make sure like nothing else like this happens again. So she ends up bringing me back. She doesn't like break up with the guy or anything, and she like leaves me in this environment. Well, then what happened was a few weeks later, I saw a whole bunch of men in a room. There were 3 of them. There was the guy that had done this to me. It was her boyfriend, and there were 2 other people. And they were exchanging money. And I became curious. It was sunset, so I think I was supposed to be in bed, and I had come out because there was commotion. So my mom was at work, and I had come out of my room, and I wasn't obeying very well. And I came out of my room to see what was going on, and I saw the money, and I was like, I said to them, I said, I want money too. And they're like, okay, if you do stuff for the money. And about 5 minutes later, I was hog-tied, gagged, and then I was gang raped by 3 men. And I passed out on the floor, and a few moments later, I woke up and there was like blood everywhere. But I didn't want my mom to freak out. And so at 3.5, I decided to kind of clean it up a little bit. So like I took my underwear and my nightgown and I just kind of threw it underneath the bed, because I don't know, for some reason I felt like I didn't want to get in trouble, and I felt like I didn't really know what to do. Like I was just like, let's just like kind of like piece this together. Well then, a few weeks later, or at some point, I don't know how much time had lapsed, because when you're a kid, time doesn't like go like ordinary like it does for like adults. But at some point, there was somebody removing this carpet. He was removing the carpet, and I was screaming. And I was screaming, Mommy, Mommy, where's my blood? Where's my blood, Mommy? Where's my blood? I don't see my blood anymore. So this woman who was friends with my grandmother had walked to my grandmother's house, and she basically said, we think that Mary is being trafficked for money. She's complaining of stomach aches. She's bleeding a lot. She's never outside. All of these men are here, like, with her. And my grandmother was like, yeah, I kind of assumed the same thing.
Wow. Okay. So she was sensing it.
Yeah. So everybody knew, like everybody knew that I was being trafficked. I remember throwing clothing out in trash cans. I remember I remember having pictures taken of me, like touching other children. So I was also like a product of like child pornography with like Polaroid cameras and stuff like that. So my editor bluntly asked her, and she's like, is this true? Like, was Mary and Elizabeth Somboun actually trafficked? And my grandmother was like, yes, she was. Like, everybody knew. Like, this wasn't this wasn't a secret. Like,
so she did not deny it. She did not try to deny it.
Yeah, admitted it. And so I don't know what the conversation was between her and my grandmother, because I couldn't emotionally stay in that conversation anymore, because it just became too much for me. Like, editing of my book was like really hard. So so there was like a lot of things that happened. The person tried to kill me a few times and drowning me.
This is the boyfriend, right? Are you talking about the boyfriend?
Her husband.
Okay. Her husband.
Yeah. But then what happened is I remember he was holding me up against a wall, and they were like burning my feet and just listening to me scream. And I remember I was trying to hide the one day, and one of them had dragged me out from underneath the bed, and they were putting cigarettes like where my underwear was and stuff like that, like in my vaginal area, and just like burning me and just like setting my skin on fire.
Wow.
So what happened is we ended up moving because one of my friends had reported my mom to social services, and it was one of those things like where the judge was like, if you don't make this appointment, essentially, you're basically going to be facing jail time services, because this is like, we've gotten like some serious like abuse charges. So if you do not come so we can investigate and stuff like that, like we're going to just immediately remove the kids. So she freaked out and she moved from Henrietta, Oklahoma, to San Antonio, where her uncle, aunt, and cousin were living. So I got beat a lot. I had grease poured on me for cooking in the kitchen because I was making eggs and bacon and stuff, and they didn't like me doing that, and so they would pour like hot grease like on me and stuff. I remember I used to get beat for pouring the milk into the bottles for my brother, because my brother was born at this point, and so he needed food, and he would be screaming and crying and stuff, and I would put the milk bottle on the floor, and then I would take the jug and try to like fill up the milk bottle, and I would get beaten because I like spilled milk. I lived off of dog food for a while because like we were like super starved, and I tried to change him as best as I could, but the diapers were really tricky. Like I couldn't get it to where like I could like clean it up and like dispose of the diapers without getting like fecal matter all over the crib and stuff. And so
How old were you when you were taking care of your baby brother?
3, 4.
So you were still, I mean, I can't even imagine like a 3 or 4 year old, trying to basically be mommy and figure that out.
And I lost him the one day because like in my memory, I mean, because what happened is my mom's uncle had murdered somebody in the bathtub.
In San Antonio? Okay.
And what happened is she was in the bathtub and he had gotten angry with her. I don't know who she was, but she knew who I was. I don't remember who she was. Mm-hmm. But he banged her head up against like the side of the tub, and there was like all this blood. There was all this blood. And so I'm trying to like frantically run around and get towels or something to like stop the bleeding. And everybody is like, the adults are like laughing at me, and I'm like, but she's bleeding. And they're like, there's nothing that you can do. And so she had called me over and she said, Mary, she's like, you're not gonna be able to fix this. Like I'm dying. And I'm like, when you're dying, like, she's like, well, I'm gonna go to heaven. I'm like, can you take me with you? And she's like, no, sweetie, like you're too young. Like I'm dying, and like you have to stay here. And I was like, no, I don't want to stay here. And I was like freaking out. And she died.
Yeah.
And then I had blood. I had blood all over me. And the cops had come and they were asking, I remember they were asking what happened. And my uncle was like, she fell. And I yelled and I screamed like, no, she didn't fall. I said he killed her. Like he beat her head against the thing on the side of the tub. And the cop was looking at me and like looking at my uncle. And I don't know what transpired about that, but I remember the cop kept me occupied because there were 2 other cops that were inside the bathroom that were taking care of her, because I don't remember seeing her put onto the green. I don't remember seeing her in the plastic bag because the cop was dancing with me in the living room. The last thing that I remember is her body being carried out in like a plastic bag, and it had like, and there was like a dip inside the inside our floor, like going out to like the front of the house. And as the dip happened, like her arm fell through like the thing. So I knew that she was in there, but the cop was like smart enough for me to like not see her being put into the body bag. So I don't remember her being put into the body bag. I just remember the cops taking her. And my mom came home later. I don't know how much later, but it seemed like a really long time to me. And the very first thing she asked was like, where is Mary? Like, what happened to her? And they're like, oh, it's hair dye. Like, she wanted to know what was all over my hands, and it wasn't hair dye, it was blood. And it was like to the point where like the quick of my nails were like, I couldn't get them clean. Like for weeks and weeks, I was trying to get like the blood stains from like underneath my quicks, because I used to bite my nails really bad, and I could never get like the blood stain from like the quicks like clean and stuff. And the one day I had mastered running away from home. And so I had like this little, my mom actually told me the story. I don't really remember this, but my biological mom told me the story. She said, you had this little red suitcase. She said, you were really smart. Like she's like, you knew how to open up cans with like a can opener. And like, she was like, you're really, really smart. So you had taken like clothing, and you had taken a can opener and a can, and like you had gone like on all of these adventures. Well, one of these adventures that I was on, I had been gone for a while. This truck driver had picked us up because we lived close to Southwest Military Drive, and I had gone on the main highway, and he was coming back, and he was actually knocking on all of the doors in the area because he was trying to figure out who I belonged to. Mm-hmm. Because I didn't know my name, I didn't know who my mom was, and he like finally found my mom, and my mom told him like he like gave her like a warning, and like being like, you need to like keep an eye on your kids. Like I could have been who knows whoever, and murdered her or something. And so
not remembering your name and your mom, was that because you were in shock? Like,
no, I didn't remember my name because I was little. Like so like I didn't know. Like he's like, well, where do you live? And I was like, I don't know. And he's like, well, who are your parents? And I was like, I don't know. And he's like, what's your name? And I was able to tell him my name, but I wasn't able to tell him like where I lived or anything.
Sure, nothing identifying.
So my brother got beat a lot. I got beat a lot. So my mom got tired of dealing with the drama with us and my aunt and uncle and everything. So she walked up to this adoption agency that was around for like a really long time, and she came up and was like, I don't want them anymore. And so she surrendered. I remember the day it happened. There was a whole bunch of people that were coming over, and they were telling us to like go outside and go play. Like my mom had to sign something, and I remember the paperwork. There was a lot of papers. And my mom was like signing something. And a few minutes later, she was sitting on the steps with me, and she's like, I don't really remember what she said, but I just remember feeling really sad. And I was like, I just remember saying to her, I'm going to come back for you. I didn't know what she was saying to me, but I just remember saying to her, like, I'm going to come back for you. And I remember getting into this sports car that had like the racing stripes in the very back seat, because Clayton was in front and then I was in the back. And I watched her until like the car, like I couldn't see her anymore. And I knew that something strange was going on, but I didn't know what was going on. And we were put in a temporary foster home. And then the next thing I know is we are meeting these people, and we're in like this really nice hotel in San Antonio. And there were these massive robes. I remember the bathrobes of the hotel. Oh my gosh, they were like oversized, like the really fluffy ones, And
it was a fancy hotel.
Really fancy hotel. And we were playing with her, and she was like pretending that the hairbrush got like stuck in her hair, and she was like jumping up and down trying to get the hairbrush to like leave. And then they had gotten this decadent brownie with ice cream. I remember it. It was huge. It was like as big as I was, and it was like sitting in my lap, and I'm just like eating it. Well, this was the problem, because I was starved. I couldn't take food in, but they didn't know that I'd been starved. And so I threw up, and they're like, oh my gosh, like what's causing her to throw up? Like we don't get it. And they're probably like, oh, just overexcitement, over like whatever. But it was just because I wasn't used to food. Like I just didn't have food like inside of me. So the next thing I know, we're going on a plane. My brother is wearing this Humpty Dumpty shirt, and she's singing these nursery rhymes. And she's like, yeah, like we're gonna be like your new mom and dad. But nobody had really explained to me like what happened to my mom. So I didn't feel like I could really attach because I felt like, well, where's my mom? Like, what happened to my mom? Like, is my mom safe? Like, and I didn't know how to ask questions because I was kind of scared, but I just was kind of going through like the motions of all of this. Well, come to find out that they had found out that I had been sexually assaulted. They found out that my brother had severe brain damage from meth abuse and extreme abuse. So like he actually had like permanent brain damage. Um, they knew that there was something sexual with me because we had walked out of the doctor's and the doctor was like, something's happened to her. And my mom got really upset and she's like, man, sometimes I really wish I could just put the adopted sign on you when we walked out of the adoption, like not the adoption agency, but the clinic. Well, needless to say, they didn't keep me because they had a daughter when I was in second grade summer. And there was a lot of, I didn't talk a lot about because it was blocked, so I didn't really remember any of this for like a really long time. So I couldn't tell a psychiatrist, yeah, like I was sexually abused. Like I didn't know what was going on. I know that I was causing my Barbies to drown in the pool, which they thought was really strange and very abnormal and very scary, but I thought that that was kind of normal. Like I didn't know that you weren't supposed to make your Barbies drown in the pool.
Oh, yeah. So they were seeing behaviors that they were concerned about. Yeah.
So one day they were just like, I think between the stress of my dad working for Apple Computer and her staying home all the time and me just not attaching, she just basically looked at my dad and said, it's either her or it's me. And my dad was just like, okay, like we're gonna get rid of her. And so one day she didn't come with me. I said goodbye to everybody in the family and then he dropped me off at the Charlotte airport with a total stranger and just left me there and was like goodbye. And I didn't have a family anymore. I saw a couple of weeks before that, I had seen all of my stuff get packed up into 3 huge massive freezer boxes. And they basically told me like, we're going to air out your room because we don't want your smell in the house anymore. And, you know, we would want to ship your furniture, but we just can't afford the portion of it because we don't really want you to even be a resemblance in our family. They had cut up my pictures in the house to like let me know that this experience that there was absolutely and it was permanent. There was a lot of abuse. So I was under so much stress and I was pretty much starved because I was a latchkey kid, so I wasn't eating breakfast and I wasn't eating lunch and I was just like snacking on like little Debbie cakes. When I would come from school, so he was even like really noticing that I wasn't eating, and because of the starvation and the stress, my hair actually started falling out to the point that when he noticed, it was really bad. So they put me up for adoption and they were furious with the agency because they wanted a refund for the adoption fees. And this is like the worst investment we've ever made. Like we want a refund because we could have bought like a freaking Porsche for the money that we spent on this adoption, and this is a scam and we want our money back. And they're like, we don't even want to pay for her flight because we don't want to put any more money towards her. And so the agency was like, well, we don't normally take back kids, but I'm just going to, the lawyer was like, I will take her, but we'll pay for the flight. We'll pay for the flight. Like they had to negotiate with me. Like this was a huge negotiation. So I was in a group home for a while as an orphan, and then this cult family decided that they wanted me. Now I was in protest of this because I knew that they couldn't afford my psychiatric bills, and I was livid with the agency. I was like 11. I was so mean. I was so mean to her because I was like, no. I was like adamant. I was like, no, you cannot allow this family to adopt me. I said the Ruffings, who made a lot more money than them, could not afford my psychiatric bills. Do not put me with this family because they're not going to be able to take care of me. And I was like, please do not put me with this family. And my caseworker was angry with me because she's like, you're not even supposed to be thinking about like money. Like, where is this coming from? Like, you're way young to be thinking about such a, and I was like, no, like, please don't do this to me. And they did. And then my mom kind of hinted at me that she didn't want me because she was like, you know, you can tell the lawyer, like prior, like the day before the adoption, we had a long conversation in the car. This isn't in the book, but we had a really long conversation in the car. And she's like, if you don't want to be adopted, like you can just tell the judge that you don't want to be adopted. And I think that was her way of like telling me that she didn't want to adopt me either. But I felt trapped because I didn't know what to do, because I felt like a burden to the family that I was going to, because I knew I was going to be a financial burden to them. And I even said to them as soon as I walked into their house, I'm like, you know that I eat a lot and kids are super expensive. Like, I really don't think that you want me. Like, I was trying to get people not to adopt me. Yeah, like it's expensive to feed me. Like, I eat a lot. So like I rational being, and I'm like, I'm telling you, the last family that I was with said that you guys are going to be crazy, like thinking about adopting me. Like, I was trying to literally convince them not to adopt me, and nothing worked. Like,
was life at the orphanage, did you feel like that was, I don't know, adequate for you? Like
adequate, but the problem is the guy, the one of the people, so it was owned by like a husband and a wife, and he had alcoholic problems. He ended up starting to drink to cope with all of the kids, because they had done this for like a lot of time and they didn't have a lot of support. So I knew that I couldn't go back necessarily to the group home, but I felt kind of scared because I'm like, well, the agency waived my parents' adoption fees. And this is why I knew that they couldn't afford me, because the adoption people, my parents, before they had adopted me, said that they had waived the fees because they couldn't afford it. And I looked at my caseworker and I'm like, if they can't adopt the adoption fees at $20,000, they're not going to be able to afford my $125,000 psychiatry bills. And they're like, well, how did you know that it's $120,000? Because I said, people talk to me about this stuff. So I was trying to like advocate for myself, but I was doing a very bad job, clearly, with trying to like get the right family or the right fit for me. And I guess because I was 11, they were afraid that I wasn't going to get adopted.
Yeah.
So I got adopted.
I mean, it sounds like all these adults were having these conversations that are basically adult conversations, but they're having them right in front of you as if you don't get what's going on.
Yeah, because
but
I already knew, and so it was really, really frustrating. And it turned out that this family like really didn't want me, because my mom because the only reason I got adopted into the family was because my dad wanted a girl. That was the only reason that I got adopted. And my mom didn't want me. My brother didn't want me. My eldest brother was in the military, so he didn't even really get a say. And my youngest brother was kind of siding with my middle brother, and they're like, we don't really want her. And so it was very obvious from the way that I got treated. So there was a lot of spiritual abuse in this family, which is probably like the hardest kind of abuse to kind of go through. Like, I will take being sexually trafficked like a million times over before I would go through spiritual abuse ever again. So one of the things that she was starting to do with me was saying like, Marianne, why do you hate school? And I would say, I was being homeschooled. I'm like, I hate being homeschooled because I don't have friends. And she's like, well, you're a liar, because you told me when you lived in your other house, like in your other household, that you didn't have friends. And she's like, are you a liar then, or are you a liar now? And I said, I guess I'm just a liar in general. And I would have to write this out. Then she would say to me, so she's like, okay, so you're a liar. Who are the people that are liars? And I'd be like, the people that hate God. So then she would say, by your own admission, she would write this on paper, by your own admission, you are a liar and a God hater. Where do God haters go? Hell. So you're going to hell by your own admission. This would go on for hours.
Oh my goodness.
And one day she said, Marianne, I hope one day you get AIDS.
Oh my goodness.
I hope one day that you get AIDS and that you end up with AIDS, because she's like, that's the only way that you're going to get to know God, is if you get AIDS. And she said, all of these papers that I have for the months and months that I'm collecting on you, she's like, I'm going to use this to take your children away one day, because you're going to be
my goodness.
I was like 12. I was 12. So my parents decided that it would be a very, very good idea to go to Brazil and adopt other Mary Anns who couldn't speak English and who lived off the streets and had absolutely no culture at all, and decided that this is what they wanted to do with me. So my parents sold everything that they had, and they ended up taking me to Brazil. And life became very hard. My mom basically quit homeschooling me. I was doing child labor. And the family that they had worked with, though, decided that the methods that they were using with me, they didn't want the other kids to go through that. And they're like, you can work with the adopted parents and you can give them advice and stuff like that, but we don't really want you working in a house with, because we were supposed to take on 23 other children there.
Oh my goodness.
Like, no, you're not allowed to do that. I went through a lot with that family. I remember crying this one day, and my mom dragging me up to my full length mirror, and she said, "See, you're demonic. See how you're crying? It's demonic. You're demonic." And she would like exorcise demons out of me, and she would they left me in solitary confinement for 2 solid years, to where I couldn't talk to anybody in the household, trying to force me to attach and stuff. And that had like psychological damage, like that did a lot of psychological damage and stuff. I was then told that I was eating too much and that they had to like limit my food intake, and because I was getting fat, and they're like, we can't have a fat daughter because, you know, if we can't at least school you, we at least want you to marry well. And if you can't marry well, like if you become fat, like you're never going to get a husband, and then you're going to have self-esteem issues, and we just can't have that. So they were like really like monitoring my weight and my food and all of that kind of stuff. So then at 17, I was like, I'm done with all of this. Like, I want school and I want a normal life. And so I forged my parents' signature on some school papers. I went to the local high school. I got the bus to the school and I signed myself into high school. And I got through. My brother squealed on me because he saw what I did. So he squealed on me, and I got through my second period of English. And they're like, Mary Ann Solomon, you need to come to the office. And I was like, oh, great. There goes my school day. So my dad picked me up at school, and he's like, he cursed me out. It was the very first time I ever actually heard them use like swear words, you know? And so he cursed me out, and he's like, that's it. Like, you're done. Like, we don't want you in the house anymore. We don't want you in this family anymore. And he's like, I'm sending you away. So.
And you were still in Brazil at this time?
No, I had moved back. We had moved back.
Okay.
To the States. So what happened is what my mom wanted him to do was just drop me off on the streets of San Antonio and just let me find my own way in life. Like, this was their great plan. And when my dad didn't do that, my mom cursed him out and was like, what are you doing with this bitch? Like, why did you bring her back here? Like, we don't want her. Like, just drop her off. And he's like, what do you plan? And she's like, she can become a prostitute. Like, it's fine. Just drop her off and she can figure it out. And like, you know, she thinks it's so hard here. Like, she can just like figure it out herself. Well, my dad ended up getting me into some shelters, and then I ended up getting fostered by somebody who saw how bad my dad was treating me and was like, my mom and family is going to take her. And so then I got, my very last year was like the year of peace, where I got to like live a very normal childhood, and we're still in connection to this day. So like, my foster family is like my real family. Well,
oh, that's so sweet.
So fast forward a few years, my parents did end up kidnapping 2 of my children, because yeah, they did. Yeah, they did.
You mean the mother that said she was going to kidnap or take your kids away? Oh my goodness. She is really psycho.
So she did. I was married. I had 2 children in wedlock, and she bribed people and extortion and immigration and all of it. She destroyed my whole family. She destroyed his whole family. She destroyed so many lives. Both of them did. And took me a really long time to forgive, took me a really long time to move on. It took me like a really long time to move past that. So after she did that, I took a chance. This guy from from Canada ended up meeting me like a year after this all happened. And I was like, what do I have to lose? What do I have to lose? Like, I don't have anything to lose. Like, I have everything to gain by going to a new country, but there's nothing left for me here. And so I boarded a plane and I just decided to marry this person, which was, it wasn't brilliant. It wasn't a brilliant plan because I didn't have a plan, but I started my healing process with him. And what I came through was there wasn't really anything wrong with me. That everything that happened was just really bad circumstances and there really wasn't anything wrong with me. And our relationship didn't make it, but I ended up getting a really good son out of it. And, you know, he got a really good stepmom and I healed and I decided to do surrogacy in 2018. I delivered a baby girl to an amazing family. And it was the thing that kind of, I don't know, it was a balm to like all of my soul wounds. And so that was like a super, super amazing and great experience. I got married 2 weeks after that, which was crazy. Like planning a wedding and doing a surrogacy, I really don't recommend it. Really don't. It's really stressful, but it was super amazing and it was great. And so then I went into my own photography business and I was like, no, this isn't really what I want to do. Went to school to become a counselor, and then I came back from a wedding photography thing, and Brendan was like, "This just is not your cup of tea." He's like, "You seem to like the brides before they get married and after they get married," but he's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "I'm not doing the whole bridezilla thing. Like, I just can't." And so he's like, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And he's like, "Well, what is your personality type?" And I was like, "Well, when I did my personality test and what I'm supposed to do for a living, they said a counselor, life coach, pastor, evangelist." And he's like, "Well, you could do that." And so I looked into how to become a life coach and I started my own business. And I healed, I did all of my work. And so everything that I give to clients, I've learned how to do myself through either school or life coaching certification or my stints in PTSD rehab and all of my other therapy. And I just kind of combined it. And yeah, it's cool.
And here you are.
Interviewed by you. So it's so amazing. It's so amazing. Yeah.
It is amazing.